Kings. Brenden, we're thrilled that you're here with us. I told as we were going to commercial, I mentioned, is it wrong that one of the first people I thought of when Tyrese was traded was Brenden? I was like, y'all had established what my favorite. Your post game interactions on the press conferences were must see. Not Zoom TV. I don't know what you call it. But when he went into health and safety protocols and you said, Tyrese, come see me on 2K, and he hit you back, nah, because the way you talk, you must have the greatest defense ever. I fell out.
Good stuff.
Yeah, he was fun. And then the last practice, it was the day before he got traded. When he was on his way leaving media, I said, so over this All-Star break, are we going to get a game of 2K in or what? And he's like, yeah, hit me up. We'll make it happen. And he actually DM'd me on Wednesday after the trade and said that let him know when he gets his PS5 there in a couple days.
That's man. That's really cool. I think I said this before, but it's still just cool that in really your first day-to-day season covering a team, you made a connection like that with Tyrese Haliburton. And it's something that, I just got a feeling the way Tyrese is a human, as an individual. I mean, he's not going, I don't play in Sacramento no more, so I don't remember Brenden, or I'm not going to interact. That's something that's probably going to last his entire career.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. It is a little weird for me because Tyrese is the one in the spotlight. I'm not trying to be taking anything, and it's just weird to me. It's first year and everything, but hey, it made my experience a whole lot easier and fun going into it. But now got some new guys to make relationships with, and they started pretty well in that first game.
How do you are you excited? Like what's your, we talked to Will, who was, super down, before the season started on the team, and even Will's he's a little bit more optimistic. How are you feeling after the last couple of days?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not be excited, right? Like Sabonis has played really well in that first game, and we didn't know he was going to play until about 70 minutes before tip-off. They didn't get a single practice. They did a little walkthrough the morning of, but that's it, really. So those guys are still going to just build synergy as they go along, and I think little things of realizing that you're going to get rewarded for your cuts because Sabonis is going to hit you, so we're going to see, you get rewarded for that once or twice. You're just going to keep doing it more often. So I'm excited for ball movement. We get some physicality, and I think all the new guys, a handful of the new guys that they brought in, could come with some good energy, with Sabonis being the main aspect with that. But there's also a little bit of me that I'm not going to lie, it was nice to watch a game without Buddy Hield or Marvin Bagley. I don't like to come at guys too often, but there's something to be said of there was a bad energy surrounding those two and they needed to go. So the additions are great, but there is an aspect of moving on from those guys too. It gives you a chance to I think last time we were talking about how do you build a culture, and my first step is you got to get rid of the guys that are hurting it. Yeah. And it felt like those two might have been that. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I mean, those were two guys, not to pick on them or kick them out on the way out or anything like that. But when you talk about changing the culture, these are two guys that didn't want to be a part of the culture. They didn't want to be a part of changing this culture here. They wanted to be out of here. And now you flip that not only with a more talented player. I'm not gonna assume for Justin and Jeremy, but Sabonis talked about it. You talk about a better player. Now you're talking about a guy who's looking for a home. He says, yo, I want to be here. I like it. I want to do this. So, just that energy shift in itself is enough that can just change a whole locker room, I feel.
Yeah, and it should be interesting. I think that, Tyrese was kind of emerging as the leader of this team, too. We heard earlier in the year Alvin talk about, or maybe it was Luke actually talk about, we want his personality to kind of be infectious and spread to the rest of this team, and that be the identity that we take on. So with the absence of that, I think it is also going to be interesting to see who steps up. I think Sabonis, just from what we could tell watching the game, looked like he was really going out of his way to make sure he's dapping up teammates after good plays and things like this. And you saw him and Fox kind of embrace after the game, which was funny. And I think people just love that picture, obviously.
It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how I embrace
it'll be interesting
Kenny
to see.
Shows.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Yeah. Only if he's wearing blue.
That's facts. That's facts. That's facts.
So I think that's another interesting aspect, but in the end, you got more talent. The talent fits better, but it'll also be interesting to see how kind of a leadership voice emerges here, since Tyrese seemed to be growing into that.
A couple of guys we didn't get to see, or one in particular that we didn't get to see on that Wednesday game. He was part of deals that were done yesterday. Is a long sought after target for old Monty McNair. Dante DiVincenzo is finally a member of the Sacramento Kings, and we've talked a lot about that and how that's going to impact kind of rotations and how that's going to impact things moving forward. What do you think about the acquisition of the acquisition of Dante DiVincenzo and how he fits in with Davion and Justin Holiday and this new backcourt?
Yeah, I think that, value-wise, you're getting him, Lyles, and Josh Jackson, who I know Kenny's a fan of Josh Jackson. All for Marvin Bagley is great value. I think undeniably great value. I'm going to be a little hesitant to say that Dante is like the great role player starter moving forward. I think that he absolutely can be. He started 66 games last year for the team that won the championship. But he went down in game 3 of the playoffs last year and with a torn ligament in his left ankle. And he didn't come back. He was supposed to come back December 15th of this year. So he had a whole rehab process throughout the offseason, not getting to improve. And then is set for December 15th of this year. That gets pushed back 10 days because he goes into health and safety protocol right as he's about to come back. And the 17 games since he's come back, he's been really rough. Like, I think Milwaukee's preferring Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton. Like, those guys aren't nothing, but they're not exactly great players either. And it says something that Dante can't get run over, or those other guys are getting preferred over Dante right now. So I think there's an aspect of, at least for this year, Dante might look a little rough coming back from injury. But no matter, you got him for Marvin Bagley. He's going into restricted free agency, so it'll be interesting to see what that kind of market looks like. And despite all, me trying to be a little bit hesitant and not get too excited, there is still a ceiling of being that ideal 2 long-term starter alongside this Fox-Sabonis pairing. A 3-and-D guy, they need as many 3-and-D guys as they can get, and they got a couple yesterday with Dante maybe being the highlight.
Yeah, you talk about Dante, and I'm judging him more so of what he was before the injury, and I'm like, yo, he's your starter at the 2 guard. You just laid it out. Been a little rough for him trying to get back from that injury and then health and safety protocols. Do you think that Alvin Gentry starts him right off, or is that Justin Holiday or Davion Mitchell? How you think they play that 2 guard spot next to Fox?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. My starting lineup would be Fox, DiVincenzo, Justin Holiday, Harrison Barnes, and Domantas Sabonis. Like, you're a little small, but I don't feel too hot about, when it comes to starting Chimezie Metu, or maybe you get a Harkless. I don't know. To me, Dante is a starter. Even if there's a little bit of things he's got to still work through this season, I think that also just giving him consistent run does a lot for players. He's in coming back to a team that has championship aspirations and doesn't really care all too much about what you can be. It's we need production right now when it comes to Milwaukee. I think that can make that process a little bit more difficult. I would start Dante. To me, the Fox and Sabonis and Barnes are your obvious starters, and I would put Dante in there as well, and we'll see with the rest. It doesn't seem like Davion will be. Maybe that's wrong, and Alvin changes his mind up, but he didn't start last game, and I think that says something.
Brenden Nunes of the Kings Herald with us here on D'Lo and Casey on ESPN 1320. So you talk about the starting lineup. Let's go old school. Remember how often we used to talk about the closing lineup and who's this group that's closing the game? Is the starting lineup the same as the closing lineup?
Yeah, again, the obvious 3, right? Fox, Barnes, and Sabonis. I'll throw Dante in there too. And then, it depends a little bit of what your situation is like. Are you up a couple points? Then maybe you look towards Mo Harkless because you need a little bit more defense. If you're down then and need some rebounding to go against whoever your opposition is, I think that Trey Lyles might be interesting. He's another one of these guys where I don't quite know what you're getting here. There's some interesting offensive versatility and size that I think he has a chance. It's interesting because I look at the roster yesterday and I'm like, man, this team's really deep. but I still don't quite know who your 5 are. But I think having some options will be interesting, but it's just like figure it out. I guess actually I probably just skip my mind here. Davion's got to be in there.
Okay, so I was going to ask why you hate. Yeah, I was going to ask why you hate Davion Mitchell, but
nah, I don't know what I was thinking. The chat reminded me here. It's Fox, Davion, Dante, Barnes, Sabonis.
Okay, all right. Because I was definitely working on a Brenden hates Davion shirt idea in my head.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't know. Tell us how you really.
It would go right next to the Kenny hates Rashawn line that we're getting to launch here.
You're new to this game. You know, let me hype you up. Don't listen to the media. I mean, the media is just the worst. They just paint you in a light. They lie about you all the time. The media, bro.
Brendan's heard you try to trade Rashawn Holmes for the last 3 weeks. Knock it off.
Yeah, Kenny's at the point he's talking about himself in the third person, or what? What's going on here?
Oh, Kenny been at that point for years, bro. Kenny been there for years.
Yeah, what was that movie? I think it was Eddie. That was I don't know why I remember Eddie so vividly, but Stacey Patton. Stacey Patton don't do that. You don't remember Stacey Patton? It was Malik Seal with Stacey.
No, I remember The Rock though. The Rock says you're going to, which was born from Deion Sanders, by the way.
Really?
That whole persona was born from Deion Sanders. Yeah.
He did a good job of it, though. Y'all sleeping on Eddie, though. Eddie wasn't a bad movie. Odin Polonies was
just like Eddie because it's based in New York. Will you stop it?
That's a great reason why. Absolutely.
I apologize, friend Brenden.
But look, Brenden, we talk about Rashawn Holmes. And how do you see, obviously he's not going to start, I don't think, but how do you see his role changing? I mean, do you think it's a major minutes reduction for him, or, do you see him still finding a way to get 17 to 20 minutes a night?
Man, it's a weird one, right? Like, Holmes hasn't looked like himself this year. And I think he's had some bad luck, right? He had the eye injury early, and then he comes back and has an eye laceration that keeps him out for a long time. He says that's the first injury he's had in his career where he wasn't able to stay conditioned, and obviously that's a big thing for an energy guy like Rashawn. Comes back, only gets a couple games under his belt before he goes into health and safety protocol, so I don't think he's been able to get a rhythm. I think we've heard Alvin recently before the deadline say that he feels like he's kind of starting to get there, Rashawn that is, but still not quite. But I mean, right before the Sabonis trade, it was like Damian Jones just straight up playing better than Rashawn Holmes. And I think Rashawn is shown that he can be way better. Like, I still think this whole 4-year, $47 million deal is a great value contract for Rashawn. But I don't know, man. I mean, I think that when you get these sort of versatile pieces on offense and you're looking for a backup big, and to me, the question with this team still lies on the defensive end. I kind of think that there's going to be moments where Damian Jones might be preferred to be the backup center right now. I hate to say it. Like, when Rashawn's playing like he does, he deserves it, but he hasn't been.
You guys heard Brenden say it. I wasn't Kenny Caraway who said that.
But it makes sense, though, right? Because Damian Jones offers something that both Sabonis and Rashawn Holmes don't. Like, putting Damian Jones is almost like a complete change of pace.
Yeah.
He's a different type of 5 than the other two are.
But I'll say this, and this is where ultimately I think Rashawn Holmes is a high level backup big in this league, like for a championship team, right? Not saying that's what the Kings are going to be, but the Warriors would have him as a backup and be like, oh, these guys are stacked, right? Because some of the deficiencies that Rashawn Holmes has against starting bigs, starting 7-footers, your Jokic's, your Embiid's, he's not an elite guy, but he struggled with Mitchell Robinson. You bring him off the bench, he's not going up against those guys. And he is going to eat your bench bigs alive with energy, with athleticism, with what he's able to do. And I just think, like, some of the negatives of having him in a starting lineup sometimes will turn into those same things will turn into major positives coming off the bench. And that's why I think he's perfect behind Sabonis. He's like a fringe starter, and you got him coming off your bench, dominating the second unit. I think he can be super vital for what the Kings want to do.
Yeah, I think Rashawn can be a starting big in the league on a team that goes deep in the playoffs. I just think that defensively, it's got to be a switch-heavy scheme. He's got to have other wings around him that are versatile where he can kind of fit into that. And it just takes a roster that already has that in place. That's clearly not where Sacramento's at. But no matter, like, as a backup, I think that he does fill that role really well for all the reasons that you just described. For me, the question, weirdly, because I never thought that you'd have to ask this with Rashawn, is like, how does he feel about that? Because his energy's been weird this year. I know that, again, there have been all those hurdles for him and everything, but it just doesn't have this same energy. He was the energy guy last year and throughout his whole career, really. Just got paid, so maybe this just like alters your mindset a little. I don't think he gets a big head because he got a contract or anything like that, but I think he's just at a different point right now and, just got committed to this deal that, it was getting put out that he wanted 4 years, 80 and goes for 4 years, 47. Probably feel a way about that. He deserved more money. And now you're getting moved to the backup spot for Sabonis. And he didn't I would guess that he expected to be moved yesterday. I expected him to be moved. He only played 2 minutes in the first half of that first game with Sabonis. And Damian Jones ended up coming in. And it doesn't help that one of his weaknesses is rebounding. And Sabonis is one of the best rebounders in the league. Like, Rashawn got put out there in the first game behind Sabonis, and Minnesota instantly got 3 offensive rebounds. Like, that's not going to feel great. So I think that he can be a great backup big, and having that center depth is something that'll be new to the Kings, because last year and maybe 2 years prior, it was like, when Rashawn goes out, this team sucks. But now you have him as a backup with Sabonis as your starting 5. I think that if Holmes is good with this and buys in, that I think that, yeah, there is a whole lot of potential there. I'm still curious. Maybe times you look towards D. Jones, but I would understand Rashawn Holmes feeling a type of way about this, and we'll just have to see how he responds.
Yeah.
Is this the type of group, is this the type of roster De'Aaron Fox needs around him to reach a higher level of success?
Yeah, for sure. I think that De'Aaron's got to feel good that while they went out and actually like put pieces around me. Before this is his 5th year. The biggest thing they did was trade Zebo and Josh Jackson for Harrison Barnes. And Barnes has been great. Barnes just dropped 30 last game. That's no shade to Harrison Barnes, but that's not somebody that's altering the trajectory of your franchise. And Fox has needed help. And I think that he seemed like he was in good spirits after that first Minnesota game. Like, Tyrese just got traded, and they seem like they're close. But I think that he was excited for what was to come with Sabonis, and you saw them kind of maybe working through some initial chemistry on court. So I think that the ability to play in the pick and roll with a guy like Sabonis should do wonders for De'Aaron, and the ball moving so much and him being such an athletic player that is smart it should do a whole lot for him. And I think that I would assume that he understands that, like, all right, we're expected to get wins right now. I know that was kind of the case going into the year, but it was also, you're leaning on some younger guys as well. But right now it's like, it is time to get this going. And he's, they put good players around him. So this is his moment. I feel like he's got to feel pretty good about what they did and recognize that, all right, it's time to do this.
The shiny new car that is Domas Sabonis has just been, I've been fawning over this guy for the last 48 hours after what I saw on Wednesday. You were on the Kings beat with James Ham, and you were like, in no specific terms, he's like, I'm gonna be cool right now because I don't know. There's some things I still want to see. What are those things you still want to see before you get too excited about what's going on with Sabonis being here and the rest of the pickups they had?
Yeah, I think it's figuring out what these guys, how these guys kind of all match together. Like, can you cement this identity of ball movement? Because that's what we saw in this first game. But, it's one game. Like, 5 games into this season, we're feeling really good about this team. They were 5-5. They were 5-4 through 9 games, played really good opponents. One of those is a win against the Phoenix Suns, best team in the league. So I just think that we just need to see it more. Alvin needs to figure out what these rotations are really going to look like. He's got a lot of playing to do with all these new pieces. They were cutting down to an 8-man rotation right before this. So I think that figuring out who those guys are and yeah, I mean, that first game, I think Barnes is a guy that'll really benefit from playing off Sabonis. He's a smart guy. He's a good cutter. And I think that, I think those guys will make each other better. But I also, you're not going to get 30 points on 11 shots from Harrison Barnes that often. You're not going to get Chimezie Metu getting 5 dunks in the first quarter and a freaking monster goaltend. You're not going to get that performance from Chimezie Metu every single night. So I think that it's just, I have to see it more. It was a great start. I love that there's actually a physicality to this team, but it's easy for guys to start to break as the losing comes, So I think until we see a couple tough losses, because they're bound to happen, they happen to every team, and how they respond to adversity, we don't know what we have here.
So they're not going 24-0?
23-1 is all I'm saying.
Okay, all right. I appreciate it, Brenden being sensible. I hope you get the spirit of this question, because I know what it's going to come across that, and I'll own it. What's bigger, the additions or the subtractions?
It's the.
That was deep, huh?
It was.
That's all right.
I'm gonna go with the subtractions. Weirdly, love Sabonis, obviously. But I'll say that you're getting rid of a horrible energy that was around this team. And I think that was the first step, is trying to figure out how you can stop this horrible momentum. I mean, stop a 15-year playoff drought that's hanging over your heads. I do think that, Marvin and Buddy had wanted out. So getting rid of players that don't want to be there is a big deal. I think that the easy answer was the additions, so I just chose the subtractions, what we went with there. So I don't want to downplay the guys that they brought in, but yeah.
That's solid right there. That's solid. Brenden Nunes, host of the King's Pulse podcast, did some great work with James Ham last night on the King's Beat podcast as well. You can check out his work on the King's Herald and the Sacramento Bee as well. You covered the Kings just about everywhere, Brenden. You're doing a great job, man. We appreciate you hanging out with us today.
Always glad to come on, fellas. Keep up the good work.